want to thank Jeff for suggesting that everybody write down, print out in a very large font things that they were going to say today, just in case. Thank Marion for bringing the tissues, because I think we're going to need them. Before I even start, woke up this morning, went outside to feed the horses. First thing I saw, hawk flying through the trees. Get in the car, Free Bird by Lynyrd Skynyrd on the radio. I don't think Len knew Lynyrd Skynyrd from Beethoven, but I got the joke. I'm not a particularly superstitious person, but today I'll take it. So thanks for coming. We're here to honor my dad and his life, and there's going to be a lot of people talking about birds today. I know that. So he was really a much more complex person than that, and had a lot of interests and passions that evolved and changed over the years. So I'm going to try to talk about the other things and illustrate, if I can, some of the other facets that really made his a truly interesting life, and try to paint a picture of the whole guy. In addition to wildlife, one thing that captured his attention for his entire life was the study of rocks and gems and minerals. And we took month-long family trips to the Southwest when I was a kid, and on several occasions, we didn't know whether to look up or down, birds or petrified wood. Some of the jewelry that he made and some of the minerals that he loved are on display in the rotunda. And I'm going to ask you guys to help me a little bit here to try to paint this picture. So please raise your hand if you own a piece of the jewelry that he made. Okay, I thought so. We won't have quite as large a representative sample for all the questions, but I am going to ask a few more. He was an avid fan of country and bluegrass music, and he attended a lot of concerts and collected records throughout most of his early life. And he passed on that passion, not just to me, but to many others. And as a younger man, he filled our home and the homes of a lot of other people with music and country songs and bluegrass standards. He played guitar and piano and accordion, none of them particularly well. And I suspect this may be a smaller group because we're going back a little further, but please raise your hand if you ever attended a concert with him or sat around the house listening to records and playing songs. I thought so. As a young man, he was a talented athlete. He was scouted by at least one pro baseball team that I'm aware of. He told me when I was in Little League that he had a really good fastball and a really lousy curveball, so he chose engraving. He watched hockey almost religiously, and even as late as just a couple of weeks ago, he was cursing the Los Angeles Kings. At one time, he was on a state championship bowling team, and later he and my mom led an amateur bowling team that played every Tuesday night in Bernardsville. Those Tuesday nights were important to me, not for reasons that had anything to do with bowling, but those were nights when my buddies could come over and bring their guitars and basses and drums, and we were sort of free to play as loud as we wanted to play, with my parents' blessing, and maybe borrow a couple beers from the fridge. So it was sort of where my first rock and roll dreams were born and realized was on those Tuesday nights. It was a really odd synergism of music and bowling. So please raise your hand if you ever attended a sporting event with him, a Devils game or a Yankees game or something like that. A few, mostly trustees down here in the front. He had a passion for learning and for teaching, and he loved the minute facts of things. He liked to find out how things worked, and when they broke, he would fix them. And that could have been, your car or your attitude. He liked sharing. He liked sharing his knowledge about the natural world and the creatures in it. And he gave lectures and spoke to school groups and took hawks and owls to garden clubs and scout groups and pretty much anywhere anybody would listen. He published his findings about hawk migrations and the breeding patterns of owls in the state of New Jersey and all manner of scientific journals, and this is probably one of the few places in the world that I could say North American Bird Banding magazine and have people go, yeah, that's a reputable publication. He did not really have a lot of formal education of his own, but he was intensely proud of his degree that he received here at Drew, the honorary doctorate in science. And anybody who knew him well at all had, I'm sure, at one point heard him shout, "I'm a doctor, damn it," at somebody, some unsuspecting Raptor Trust visitor just like trying to take a picture of a vulture or something. He was also a drill instructor during the Korean War, and maybe some of his personal teaching style came from that experience. So I think we'll get a pretty large sample here for this question. Please raise your hand if you ever attended any of his lectures or programs. Please raise your hand if you were just ever plain lectured by him. All right, we're up to like 99% here. Later in life, he took up fishing with a vengeance. He spent some time on a private pond in the Bedminster area, as many as 5 days a week in the summer. I mean, he did a lot of fishing. And when his heart really began to fail earlier this year, and we began meeting with more and more specialists and spending more and more time in the hospital, on more than one occasion, he looked right at the cardiologist and said, "When can I go fishing again?" Not when can I go back to work, or even how much more time do I have, or when is the next bald eagle release, or when are Jess and Leah coming to visit? He wanted the answers to those questions, but mostly he wanted to go fishing. He was, of course, a husband and a father, and only very recently a grandfather. I made him wait 78 years. He was intensely proud of all those things, too, and he loved to share about his family, and I know that many of you sat probably like over and over and over and over again while he pulled out the pictures of Diane on her wedding day, or Jess or me or Leah from his wallet. So how many of you saw those pictures in his wallet? Right? There was only 3 of them, and it was the same 3 that he showed everybody every time. He showed them to me. Dad, I've seen those. No, he had all these aspects to his life: the birds and rocks and minerals and sports and fishing and music and family and more. And I wanted to give you this sort of broad picture today. Because, again, you're surely going to hear a lot about birds, and that's fine. That truly is his legacy. But he was a multifaceted guy and kind of a complete person, almost. Because without Diane, a lot of the things that he fought for and won, and much of what he dreamed about and realized, and much of what he accomplished would not have been possible. He was not a particularly formal guy. So I'm hoping that this event will honor him without being overly formal, too. And he really loved life, and he loved laughter, and he loved to make others laugh. And although he had a real horrible run with his health and had every reason to be mad at the world, and sometimes was, he still embraced it, especially the creatures in it. And he tried to make it a better place for every living thing. So it's my hope that in sharing some stories today and in sharing some songs, we'll laugh a little and remember him. So there's been an amazing outpouring of support from people all over who knew the Raptor Trust and our family. And one thing that resonated in a lot of the cards and letters and emails was his generosity. So he built the Raptor Trust out of his own pocket for the well-being of the birds. And I can't tell you how many former Raptor Trust employees and friends and other wildlife rehabilitators and family ended up with hand-me-down tools or building supplies or old cars or something that were either owned by him and Diane or by the Raptor Trust. I'm pretty sure it's not legal for the president of a nonprofit to give away its assets. But that didn't really matter to Len because he saw those acts of generosity as the right thing to do at the time. So I'll tell one quick story about his generosity, just to illustrate the point, get us moving in the right direction. I mentioned his favorite fishing spot, which is private pond up in Bedminster. And a few years ago, when the dock where he and his buddies kept their boat was in need of repair, it didn't seem as if the property owner was going to attend to the matter in a time frame that was acceptable to Len. So he took it upon himself to get the dock fixed. And I don't know who did the actual labor. His fishing buddies can probably tell you. But I do know that most of the materials were leftover supplies from the Raptor Trust, donated to the cause so that their fishing expeditions would be more enjoyable. And so, in a timely manner, the new dock was built. So here's the kicker. The owner of this private pond happens to own at least one major New York sports franchise and one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. I don't think this is a guy that really needs any charity or donations. But, you know, for Len, it was time to go fishing, damn it. So he just did it like he did everything else. He figured out a way to make it happen, and thus it was so. So thanks again for coming. I really do appreciate all of your being here and your support in so many ways. Thank you.